Hey there, welcome to a special edition of Locked On Astros. I've got Mike Stanton here, World Series champion, Houston Astros commentator and contributor to MLB Network on SiriusXM. We're going to talk about the arbitration process, signing the players, and just the business of baseball with a pro. Let's get started right now.
Welcome to Locked On Astros, your daily Astros podcast. Here are your hosts, Eric the Man Huysman and Greg Htown Wheelhouse Chancey.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome into a special edition of Locked On Astros. I'm Htown Wheelhouse. Thank you for tuning in. You can find me at Htown Wheelhouse on X, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find me at Astros411 on X, Instagram, Facebook. You can find me on TikTok as well. Find the show on TikTok, on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're free and easy to listen to. We're always positive, always Stros. And we got the man, the World Series champion, one of the best on-air commentators in the whole baseball world, Mr. Mike Stanton. Mike Stanton, how you doing? Tell everybody where they can find you and tell us what you're doing here in the offseason.
Oh, well, baseball. That's what I'm doing all the time. I'm talking, if I'm not talking with baseball with you or on, on television or on the radio, I'm coaching baseball. So yeah, I'm kind of baseball all the time. And it's, people ask, well, what do you do in the off season? Well, sorry, this is not my off season. I'm just as busy. I'm probably more busy now than I am during the Major League Baseball season.
Because everybody knows, oh, well, Mike's got TV, so we don't bother him, right? You kind of got that mode going on.
Right. But to tell you the truth, the TV gig, it's a pretty sweet thing because what do you do? What am I doing? Well, I talk baseball before the game and after the game, and then the rest of the time I'm watching baseball.
That is quite the slide into a retirement. I mean, who gets to do what they dream of, and then after they get done doing what they dream of physically, they get to keep doing what they dream. I mean, so that is excellent.
Well, again, I can tell you, Brett, I have been blessed way more than I ever deserved. That's for sure.
That's awesome. Well, and I think the people can see that, and I know all of our followers, our thousands of followers that watch us every month, and I know when we have you on, we always get positive feedback. So let's just jump into it. Baseball is a business, and
sure.
As a fan, because when I'm at the game, I'm a fan. When I'm on Locked On, I try to be an objective commentator. I kind of got the Homer vibes, but that's because I'm very passionate about this team. But we've got all these issues coming up, and we'll talk about who's most likely to be re-signed and things like that here in the second segment. But talk to us about baseball being a business, because as a fan, when a fan sees, well, Crane, now you hear Jim Duquette talking, well, the Astros are listening to offers on Bregman. Kyle Tucker has not been signed. Framber Valdez has not been signed. They're going to ARB and all this stuff. The fans are like, hey, you got the pocketbook, Jim Crane. Just pay him. And you and I talked before today, kind of setting this up, how it is a business. Explain from a player's perspective how it's not just a black or white issue. It's not just cut and dry. It can be very arduous, the process.
Oh, it's a very complicated situation in every single one of those that you just said. Does Jim Crane have the money? Well, I don't know his checkbook, but from everything we've heard, yeah, he's got the money. But listen, you don't become a billionaire by just writing checks and doing whatever you want. Baseball is a business. He bought the Astros because he is a big Astros fan. He wanted to be an owner, but it's still a business. It's still bottom line. And, Major League Baseball has a lot to do with it as far as, luxury tax and all the thresholds and all that kind of stuff. So, there's a lot that goes into it other than just as a fan myself also just saying, oh, yeah, well, you got the money. Go ahead and sign Bregman and sign Tucker and Altuve. But that's not how the business works. This isn't about it is about winning baseball games, but it's also about running the business. And the thing is, baseball players, going through the minor leagues, your first couple years in the big leagues, yeah, there's contract negotiations, but the owners have really all of the leverage. They kind of can pay you what they want to pay you up until you get to arbitration. So it's really arbitration is when the first time you get that real vibe of what the business side, how brutal the business side of baseball can be.
Yeah, and that's one of the things you and I were talking about, and one of the things that really piqued my interest, but reminded me of the Brandon Woodruff negotiations. I'm sorry, not Brandon Woodruff, Corbin Burns.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think when I was talking earlier, I realized when we got off the phone, I had the wrong picture, but Corbin Burns talked about it openly in spring training to Ben Verlander, I believe it was, and said, yeah, the arbitration thing wasn't fun. They basically looked at me and said, you're the reason we lost in the playoffs. And I was just like, wow. And you've been through the arbitration process.
I have.
And so what is that like as a player? Because as a player, you want to know that your employer is happy with the job you're doing, right?
Well, just to give a little history of arbitration, you go all the way back to the beginning. The actual general managers were the ones that would sit on the other side of the table and just badmouth you for an hour. And, so what happens is you go into a room, you got the arbitrator, which is usually just one guy. He's sitting at the end of the table. You're on one side, the team is on the other. The team has like an hour to plead their case. And what is their case? Their case is you stink. That's really basically what they're telling you. I went through it with the Boston Red Sox. Now, the good thing that I had going for me, I had no connection with the team whatsoever. I had just been traded over, the previous trade deadline. And in this offseason, this would be 95 offseason between 95 and 96. So I didn't really have any real connection with the team. I had been with Atlanta for the first 8 years of my professional career. And basically their whole premise in that hour, they were basically saying I was get a left-hander out lefty. I was just kind of a left-handed specialist. I didn't really do anything all that well. I hadn't pitched very well in Atlanta. I got traded, but I did pitch well for the Boston Red Sox. And by the end of the season, I was actually in the playoffs. I was actually closing for them.
Wow.
And, so our argument on the other side was, okay, if he's just a left-handed specialist, why did you trade for him? And why is he closing for you? So, this is obviously the very quick version of the story, but
obviously,
it can be a brutal process. I had several teammates, knew of many other guys that had gone through arbitration, and some of them have even won in arbitration. That they come out of the meeting and go, you know what? With everything that they just said, there is no way I will ever sign for this team this team because of that. Now, they smartened up, Major League Baseball smartened up and got the general managers, because general managers have to have a relationship with the player.
Exactly.
So you come out of the meeting, and now all of a sudden he walks up to shake your hand and you want to punch him in the face because of everything he just said.
Well, yeah. Well,
So what happened was Major League Baseball went to an outside firm that actually would hear the cases, and that's still what happens today. But they're still representing the organization. They're still everything that they say, this firm says, is coming from the organization. So it is a brutal introduction to the business side of baseball, because up until then, there's some negotiations back and forth, and really, the young players, all they're saying, just be fair to us. We know that you can pay us whatever you want, but just be fair to us. And it's not really until you get to that arbitration. And listen, everybody doesn't go through arbitration because it's a brutal process, not just for the player. It's brutal on the ownership side also. Wow. So it's designed that way. It's supposed to be uncomfortable for everyone in the room, or else everyone would go to arbitration. And so it's just I don't want to say it's a bad system, but man, it can be brutal when you go through it.
So I guess your rebuttal as a player isn't necessarily go, oh yeah, well, you put me in that situation and that manager didn't pull me in the 8th inning, but it's more like, okay, I see that, but let me show you where I made connections where,
Mhm.
hey, after this game, we had this rookie come up and we talked and I helped him. So
Yeah.
what I've got is more than on that mound. It's in the bullpen. And so that's where you're basically a salesman for yourself.
Yeah, and I mean,
It
you
sounds
have
like.
the player, they have to be there. I flew the one time, and the hearings are done in New York. I flew all night on a red eye. I was in Houston. I had travel issues. And I basically walked in, no sleep, put on my suit, and we went into
Wow.
the room. And yeah, there was one time, I'm getting up to yell, and my agent had to pull me down. There was another time he was getting up to yell. I had to pull him down. It was looking back on it, and years later, in a way, it was kind of comical. But yeah, when you're going through it. And my particular case was actually called a midpoint cut case. So let
Okay.
people know exactly what happens in arbitration. The numbers that are given to each side or given to Major League Baseball, that's not the important number. The important number is what is the midpoint between those two numbers. And myself as a player, I have to show that I am worth the midpoint plus $1. And what the ownership side, what the team side has to do is they have to show that I'm worth a maximum of $1 less than the midpoint.
Oh, okay.
And
So
there was a negotiation before, and that's when a lot of the arbitration cases are heard. You say, oh, well, they agreed to terms. Well, they did a negotiation. They didn't get to the actual hearing. But, midpoint cut case, what that means is that the midpoint was less than the dollar value I made the year before. There had never been a player loser in a case like that. And mine came back in like 30 minutes. I mean, I was still on my way to the airport to leave to come back to Houston.
Man, have you ever considered being an agent?
Well, it wasn't me. I was just
Right,
there.
that's true.
The agents actually
That's
did
cool.
it, and the reason it was such a quick turnaround was because the Boston Red Sox wanted to cut me the maximum of 20%. Well, they had traded for me. I had pitched well for them. I was their closer at the end of the game or at the end of the season. I had not pitched well in Atlanta, and we said, okay, you know what? I'll take a 10% pay cut. Okay. I'm agreeing to this, so obviously I'm okay with it. You look good in Major League Baseball because I'm taking a pay cut. No, we're not going to do that. We want the 20%. So we knew what the number was. So the number that we put on the other end kind of manipulated the number, and it was $20,000 less than what I made last year, and that made it a midpoint cut case.
And wow.
So my agents were the ones that really did.
There you go.
Did all the heavy lifting.
So the volume of the 10% and 20% cuts are a much bigger chunks these days.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
you just
Yes,
saw.
they are.
And we'll talk about this more here in a second. After we hear about FanDuel, but Sonny Gray valued at $20 million, getting 25 a year for the next 3 years. But before we do that, I want to talk to the people about FanDuel. Hey there, thanks for stopping in to Locked On Astros. Let me tell you about FanDuel. It is the number one sports book in the nation. That's right. The NFL season is in full swing. And if you watched that Texans game last weekend, they almost had another victory at the end of the game. They came up a field goal short. But look, I want to talk to you about a great deal that they have at FanDuel. All you have to do to get in on the moneyline bets is you join FanDuel. Right now, you can go do it. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet on a money line. That's $150 if your team wins. This next week's money line, the Broncos and the Texans. Texas money line is minus 180. The Broncos is plus 152. If you've been thinking about joining, why are you waiting? It's easy to use. It's a wide range of options that are available to you: spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. Don't kick it off. Keep it going because it is rolling almost directly into the playoffs. And also make sure that you check out the new national streaming channel. Locked On has launched the first ever 24/7 sports streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Today. Sports Today is here for you, covering 24/7 all the top stories in sports with the local experts like myself and Eric. When we have special shows like Stanton, maybe you'll see us show up there. The national shows covering every league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to our the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel today. So Mike, thank you so much again for joining me. Your knowledge, your experience is just second to none. And when I see guys that are valued at 20 million getting 25 a year, and when I just look at salaries across sports, it is unreal. And I tell my son sometimes, I remember hearing Nolan Ryan getting $1 million. I remember hearing these athletes getting $3 million. Oh my gosh, $9 million. That's insane. And my dad saying, I'll never support that. I'm going to stop going to games. Well, he still goes to games, and he doesn't like the salaries now. I can tell you that much. But the Astros, I don't even think we need to really have a discussion. We know that it seems like Jose Altuve is a foregone conclusion, that they're going to keep him. I mean, you cannot. He, to me, is a Bagwell Biggio icon-esque player, right? And I really thought for a while
if not bigger.
If not, you're right. No, no. And he's become my favorite player all time. And that really probably goes without saying. I really thought it would have been cool to have a statue of him and Correa, doing the handshake at the end of their career.
Right.
But we know that didn't work out. Springer left. And, Springer talking about the arbitration stuff. I know he was not too keen on the way they handled a lot of things with him and stuff like that. And he wanted to go get that bag, and they didn't offer him what he was looking for. Now, out of Bregman, out of Tucker, and out of Framber Valdez, which one of these guys is most likely, do you think, to re-sign? I know it's a tough call, but would you have a preference over position or years, or like, what are you looking at as a club? Who do you think stands to give you the most for the longest amount of time, or is it a crapshoot?
It's a crapshoot. But if you look at what the players have done so far in their careers, if we'd had this conversation, Brett, 2 years ago, Bregman was a shoo-in. He was going to be right there. He was going to be a lifer, just like Jose Altuve. I mean, if Jose Altuve does not sign with the Astros, this might be the biggest shock in Major League Baseball, even more than, where is Ohtani going or something like that. Just because, I mean, everyone considers Jose Altuve a lifelong Astro. And I think he's going to end his career here in Houston, and he is going to go down. If he's not already, I think there's a lot of people that feel like Jose is already the best Astro ever. Put a couple more years on the back end of this, and oh my goodness, it's not even going to be a conversation. But so as far as Bregman is concerned, a couple years ago, you would say Alex is going to be in that same boat. I don't know if that's still the case here. I think it's still if I had to, give odds or whatever, I still think Bregman is the odds-on favorite to be the one that they bring back. He's a good offensive player. He's a very good defensive third baseman. He solidifies the left side, the hot corner there on the left side. And he's been a fan favorite. Tucker, if you look at production, Tucker is still on the way up. I mean, he's having MVP caliber seasons. Yeah, he struggled in the postseason, but we're talking regular season right now. That's what you get paid for. Framber is another one that I just really don't know, just simply because when was the last time we saw the Astros step up and sign a pitcher long term, for big money? It was probably Lance McCullers Jr., and he's in the middle of that contract right now.
And he's been hurt a lot too. Unfortunately,
has pitched very little far since he signed that contract. So he's still got a lot of time left. Framber has been a workhorse. There's no doubt about it. He's one of the best left-handers in Major League Baseball. But there's always such a risk with the pitchers. And even as healthy as Framber has been, you never know. You never know if there's going to be an injury. So, you what you do in a situation like this, you take the information that you have right now and you make your decision and you move on. So it's going to be fascinating to see exactly what direction the Astros want to go. And you have to also remember there's a second person in this negotiation. It's the player themselves. You have to make sure that the players want to stay in Houston. You would think that all these guys we're talking about would say yes, but you never know. In a negotiation, there's two sides.
Exactly. Now, were you surprised at all that Hector Neris didn't take the $8.5 million, or were you not surprised? I mean, because seeing that Montero got 11 for 3 years,
Yeah,
and I think Neris is a much more solid option pitching wise.
mm-hmm.
I want Neris here because I love that guy's fire. I love what he brings. I never doubt that he's going to go out on the mound and shove. And even if he makes a mistake here or there, he's going to correct it more times than not.
Well, he's got the devastating split.
He does. He just seemed like a guy that was such a good dude in the clubhouse that, yeah, I'll take the 8.5. Let's try to run it back again. But no, he knows, like, I've got a payday coming.
Well, I mean, here again, now this is the business side of baseball showing up for the player. And you look at that situation and, I say, even players that get the qualifying offer, which is much more than $8 million, it's up to $20 million.
Right.
But so where do you draw the line to say, okay, yes, I'll take the 1-year deal. We got a chance of winning again. I want another ring, compared to taking a multi-year deal. And usually the way I look at it is, does Hector Neris feel like there's a 3-year deal out there? If there's a 3-year deal, you got to go that route. You got to take the stability. You got to take the dollars. Now, if it's only a 2-year deal, now we're talking. Now we've got a different situation So for him to turn down that option, I think that he feels like there's a 3-year deal. I mean, he had a career year. There's no doubt about it. That is the best. There's no way he can. I don't think he can repeat it.
Well, see, just like Stanton the year before,
right?
Stanton came back and only signed for 1 year and signed for a very modest sum compared to what he did the previous year, I thought.
Well, with Stanton, you have to look at it. He's in a different situation.
That's true.
He did when he was in Tampa, he was doing a lot of opening and stuff. It wasn't all leverage innings like it had been for Hector. And Hector he was about as good as he could possibly be last year. I mean, it was really a special year for him. When you're trying to look at a career year, you go, okay, well, what is he going to do next year? Can he repeat it? Probably not. That's why we call it a career year. Can he give me 90% of it? Can he give me 80% of it? And, he's got to look at the same numbers, but I really think that he feels like that there's a 3-year deal out there, maybe for 8 for 3. So that's 24. So you can't give that much money to Major League Baseball.
Well, I'm just scared someone like the Dodgers or the Cardinals are retooling. They actually have one of the oldest starting rotations now.
Right.
Or heck, the Phillies. The Phillies just seem to like they just want to sign everybody.
Yeah, going back to
sign
Philly.
Crazy contract. I mean, he could go back to Philly. I mean, I would hate for that to come true. Knock on wood. I hope I'm not cursing anything. But can you imagine going back to World Series against Philadelphia and having to face Hector Neris? I mean, Good Lord. But, he's just a good dude for baseball. I actually spoke with Stanton this offseason. He's not had any conversations with the Astros. So he just said, I haven't heard anything. So I don't really know what's on the horizon.
You never know.
I would think, and of course, he's not going to play his cards and show his hand, right?
Right.
But the Astros didn't seem interested in signing the relief pitchers that didn't take the offers that they had. And so, which makes me think Dana's pretty set on where they are right now in the relief pitching area.
So we are, we call this the hot stove season, but it is really in its infancy. Haven't even, you've got the winter meetings coming up. I think next week.
Yes.
Or wait, no, this week. Is it this week?
Yeah, it's like December 2nd through the 4th.
Okay, yeah. So it is. So it's coming up. So that's really when you look at it. You go, okay, now the real off season is starting. Yeah, we've had some signings here and there, and that's good to talk about. But there are a lot of players that need to be signed, and a lot of times relievers come later.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in my career as a left-handed reliever. There were a lot of teams that felt like the lefty, even a setup left-hander, you're kind of more of a luxury than a necessity. And so a lot of times those get pushed till later into the off season. And right now we still got a whole bunch of big name players out there, and yeah,
We do.
you're still going to see some lesser players or lesser known players, some relievers. They'll still sign, but a lot of times that's not happening until later in the offseason. So you have to be patient. And it's hard for a player because you don't want to get into the new year without having a deal done. Because once New Year's happens, you're like, spring training is just around the corner, and you want to know where you're going. Your family's pressuring you. Your friends are pressuring you. Hey, where are you going? You want to know. You have to set up housing in spring training, housing in the city you're going to be. There's just so many things that goes on that it can be done at the last second, but you really rather not.
So basically, we should start seeing a lot more movement. I mean, this winter meeting season has a lot of intrigue. Ohtani, several Japanese pitchers and players coming over. Ohtani even issuing basically a statement saying that if any team mentions that I've talked to them, then I will consider not going there.
Isn't that
hearing it's crazy. I'm like, he literally pulled. I remember when Eli Manning was drafted to the Chargers, I think it was, and he wanted his son to go to the Giants.
Right.
Well,
right.
Archie stepped in. I'm Archie Manning, and my son's going to go where I want him to go. I was like, man, Ohtani pulled an Archie Manning.
Yeah.
But he is bigger than life. But what's interesting is the Astros, this next year, they've got Verlander at 43, Altuve at 29 million, Bregman at 30, Abreu at 19, Alvarez only getting 10. Alvarez starts getting 26 in 2026, 2027, 2028. Right. But in 2025, they still have Verlander's last year at 35 million. And then Lance McCullers still being paid 17 all the way through 26. So there is some Tetris type Jenga block moving type things that are going to have to happen. So going forward, Jim Crane has seen 7 straight ALCS. He's seen 4 trips to the World Series. We've seen 2 World Championships. And literally, you could talk about, I wouldn't say the Braves series, but you can talk about possibly going this year if one game goes the Astros' way, the last 2. I think they go take care of the Diamondbacks, and I'm not discrediting them. I just think the way the Rangers handled it, I think the Astros would have done the same thing.
Agreed.
And then you go back to the painful World Series against the Nationals. You're talking about a team that could have won 3 World Series in 4 seasons. I mean, so going forward, Jim Crane, the arbitration process, the signing players, what gets him down the road furthest? Is it trading guys and trying to get stuff back for them, or writing their contract out and hoping some of them take a hometown discount?
I think the latter is a very dangerous way to go about it. When you're in a run like the Astros are in, and we've seen several teams do this. The one that always comes to mind for me, the two, as much as I hate to say it, the Dodgers. The Dodgers have been perennial contenders, it seems like, for the last decade.
Yeah.
The Cardinals have done it for decades. I mean, it's crazy how good that team has been. And it's really, to tell you the truth, it's one of the shocking things that happened in 2023, that team with the MVP and the runner-up in the MVP, they couldn't score runs, they couldn't pitch. I mean, it was really an aberration for what the Cardinals have done. But you have to make these tough decisions. This is why you brought in someone with some experience in Dana Brown, and you have to make and you have to make some decisions that are not going to go over well with the fan base. But that's how you extend that window. Playing out contracts usually is not how it goes. because you have to get something in return more than just a middle of the road draft pick. So that's why you see the conversations about Bregman. Dana is doing exactly what Dana is supposed to do. Just because there are conversations about Bregman, his job is to answer the phone and listen to what somebody else has to say. And, does that mean that he doesn't want Alex Bregman playing third base? Of course not. But he's not doing his job if he doesn't listen. So, that's true. That's really what's going on here. I don't think it's a situation that they don't want Alex at third base, because if they're going to be contender, they need Alex at third base.
They do. If you're going to win now, you need Alex Bregman. Well, Mike, that brings us to the end of the show. I thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I mean, Mike Stanton, it's always a pleasure. We're definitely going to have you back, especially with the winter meetings coming up. And hey, if a big deal happens, the Astros sign Shohei Ohtani.
Oh,
and they extend Bregman and Altuve and Tucker. Let's go. I don't know. It's a dream world here at Locked On Astros. I'm Htown Wheelhouse. He's Mike Stanton. Make sure you follow him on social media. Watch all their stuff on offseason. Listen to him on the MLB Network. And thank y'all so much for tuning in. We love you guys. Y'all are the real MVPs, and we're always positive. Always Stros. And like we always say here, go Stros and bury me in the H.